We stand in the shade of trees that we did not plant, walking in the steps of where those before us paved the way. Welcome back to Approach Academy, powered by Prodigy. Today, we're gonna talk about the shot that most people fear and why you should add it to your game and how it's gonna help you score even better. Plus, we've got the brand new putter that releases today, the Pivot. So before we dive in, we gotta ask the most important question of the day. How you doing today, AJ? You having a good one? Welcome back to Approach Academy, where we are breaking down and talking about all the tools that you need to add into your toolbox to try and succeed on the putting green. So far, what we've covered, the comfort circle and how aiming correctly and choosing the right spot to throw the disc on approaches can vastly change our accuracy and our success percentage on the green. Second, the most dangerous distance in disc golf when you're about 100 feet and in, and how we should be capitalizing on that distance every single time via the flick of the wrist upshot as well as the jump putt. Well, today we're going to talk about the shot that if you added to your game, there are more opportunities where you're going to succeed, whereas in the past, you might not have. But grab your overstable putt and approach disc, because today we are talking about hyzers. Psych, I'm just kidding. Hyzers are pretty self-explanatory, and one day we'll have an episode on hyzers, maybe the next one. But today, we're talking about straight shots. Throwing the straight shot is one of the most difficult and terrifying parts of disc golf. There are so many folks who will look at where they have 100 to 150, even a 200-foot straight shot, and the terror totally hits them square in the eyes. They become overwhelmed, and they try to find every which way to get around having to throw that straight shot, especially on approaches. Because if we've thrown a great drive on a par 4 and then we have a 200-foot approach into a tunnel, it can be terrifying of how are we gonna mess this up? What's gonna happen? But when we learn to throw a straight approach shots, we can start to take that information and work it backwards from the green, from the basket, and start to score even better out on the course. Because we wanna learn today, using the Prodigy A series and PA series, how we can shape our discs on different lines to make those straight shots even easier, no matter what your natural approach is, and no matter what you like to do to throw for approaches. Now, what are we looking for when it comes to approach shots? We want reliable, we want repeatable, and there's a reason that people lean into the hyzer as their natural approach shot, because of realistically 2 factors. One, grabbing a disc like the A3 or the A2, which have reliable fade and are gonna follow that hyzer line every single time, it can become very easy to repeat this over and over again. When you grab an overstable putt and approach disc of your choice, you're gonna be able to take that disc, put it on hyzer, which is the outside edge of the disc being down, find your line, swing the disc wide, and know that because you've put the disc on hyzer, it's gonna lean into that flight, as well as knowing that because you've chosen an overstable putt and approach disc like the A series that we have here, you can also let it lean into that line even more. And we're not just talking backhand. That's the best part about hyzer, is it's not just on backhand, even on a forehand, that outside edge of the disc being down allows you to throw forehand hyzers just as reliably. In the next episode of Approach Academy, I promise you we'll talk about the hyzer and everything that you need to know about the hyzer, because while it is very simple and very repeatable, there are some definite nuances to it that I think take it to that next level. Now, while this method is reliable, it doesn't always have opportunity for us to shine. You can see here that I swing the disc super wide and it has room for the disc to swing back, but it isn't always an opportunity that I'm gonna have. The realistic scenario is that not every single disc golf course has a wide open field, and I'm gonna need to throw the disc within some sort of a boundary or some form of a line in order to score. And this is where the straight shot really comes into shine. Such as here, the double mando at hole 4 at Gardendale or Magnolia Links Disc Golf Course. There is a double mando that I have to hit to make my way into the green. So already I can't just throw a wide open hyzer into the green. But what I really love about this hole is that even from the drop zone right here, I still have to throw a straight shot for an approach. Now, this straight shot is probably no more than 150 feet away to the basket, but I have trees on the right side of the fairway and I have trees on the left side of the fairway. Now, can I get super lucky by throwing, let's say, maybe taking an A2 and trying to go crashing through the trees on the left side? But man, yeah, it snuck through. And I'm gonna have a putt over there, but I pulled it to the left and still had to get lucky through those trees. Obviously, the same thing could exist on the right side. I could try to throw, almost hit a tree there. I can try to throw the hyzers in, but the hyzer is even gonna push me further left, making a longer putt. When I could just step up and try to throw the straight shot with something like a fractal PA5 directly at the basket and have a chance for the disc to go in. That seems a lot more doable. So how do we practice throwing flat shots? You can even see there my sort of slip that for lots of people, throwing a flat shot can often result in a straight shot. And one of the easiest ways we can help determine the shape of the shot is by thinking about our follow through. This is a tip that I saw in a Paul Ulibarri clinic many, many years ago, and it has resonated with me ever since. When we think about what the arm wants to do on the follow through, when we want to throw a hyzer, we can sort of bring this hand from low to high on the angle. When we want to throw an anhyzer, conversely, we can think about bringing the hand from high to low and following through. When we commit to following through, you'll see that our hand sort of hits and it brings the action, it brings that hit point into the throw and causes it to go on that direction. Same thing as, once again, we're going hyzer, is if I'm thinking about sort of pulling low to high and I hit that release point, bang, it's coming through on that hyzer angle. So when we want to throw straight shots, often we can think about throwing the disc flat and coming through flat with the shot. Because after all, if we pick the right disc, choosing to throw flat can result in exactly what we're looking for. So for this shot, trying to go straight, I'm gonna look at a couple options that I have inside the Prodigy putter approach lineup. Leaning first on their most iconic putter and probably their most talked about putter, the PA3. And then following it up with their new putter, the Pivot, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. We've got a pretty significant tailwind because when has Robbie C ever allowed to showcase discs without having extreme winds happening? You would think that I live in Oklahoma and it's like a windy city. Birmingham is just literally not that windy, but for some reason, it do be like this whenever I be trying to throw some Frisbees. All I wanna think about is following through my hand to flat. So instead of starting by doing a full reach back and then thinking about following through flat, I'm gonna lean into the flick of the wrist upshot that we talked about before, where I'm gonna have my feet sort of squared as if I'm throwing a standard shot. And if I'm really nervous about it, I can actually pivot them a little bit forward towards the basket. And I'm gonna keep my arm, my elbow spacing out, and I'm just gonna think about letting the arm extend out during the throw to create this flat shot. And I'm gonna take these PA3s that are traditionally a pretty neutral putter, and I'm just gonna try to let them follow through, and all I'm thinking about is keeping the elbow high, letting the arm fling out as I'm throwing the shot, and then following through out and around. I wanna almost be finishing in this position right here every single time I throw the shot. Now let's see if it works. Bang. Okay, so I pulled that one to the right a little bit, which means that my head was too far forward, causing my hip point to be too far out in front of me. So I'm gonna pivot the head back just a little bit and see if that doesn't make our adjustment. Okay. There we threw the disc pretty straight, but we were looking a little too far backwards. So we're gonna try to find that middle ground, the Goldilocks, just like that. Now let's try the same thing with the pivots. I'm noticing here, this is my first day throwing the pivots, that they do have a little bit of the extra glide that the PA3 doesn't necessarily have. We almost ring it up there. Wow, what a time that would have been, hey? You can see on every single one of these, I'm not trying to go for immense amounts of power. All I'm focused on is that follow through angle. When I'm trying to approach, often I'm putting myself in a controlled shot scenario, and I just want to make sure that it's accurate. The power is inconsequential most often because I'm throwing an approach, so I don't need a full power shot anyways. Now let's take a quick second to talk about the Pivot, the new putter dropping, like I said, today over at Prodigy Discs. The Pivot is a brand new putter. It's also being released in partnership with the NHL. So currently you can find your pivots in any of the full color stamps available for your favorite NHL team. You want to cheer for the Lightning? Let's go Lightning. You want to join in the Penguins? Come on. Or you want the tried and true Chiefs? It's your choice. Obviously, I had to go with the Minnesota Wild because Minnesota, man, 1,000 lakes and even more reasons to love it. Now, one thing that I'm noticing about the Pivot right off the bat is that it was designed to be a similar hand feel to the PA3, but something that people often gripe about with the PA3 is that it doesn't have a ton of glide. It's a great throwing putter, but it has sort of its natural air brakes that are put on because of the lack of glide. When I went to throw the Pivot, I felt like I was at home, but I just noticed that it was going significantly farther. It had so much extra glide on the disc that kind of shocked me right off the bat. In fact, when I was warming up, I stepped up to about a 320-foot hole and was shooketh that I had a look at the basket by throwing the pivots right off the bat. Now, internet distance people, I'm not trying to say that I threw it 320 feet. I'm saying I had a look at the basket and, well, a gliding PA3 we have a pretty good chance of ringing it up. Now, another thing that I want to note about the Pivot right off the bat is that I do think that it's still, maybe it's because of the extra glide, but it does have just a tick more overstability than PA3s traditionally have. I even noticed that on the upshots that we just threw, of it holding straight and then still having that finish and that integrity that you get in a more overstable disc, whereas the PA3s, I was pulling just a little bit. Now, currently the Pivot is only available in the base plastic with this NHL partnership, but Prodigy's very excited about this mold, and there will be releases in the near future in their more standard and premium plastics. But I know my friend Ryan simply grabbed the Pivot and knew that his judges were in trouble because it just feels that good in the hand. So if you want that dependable throwing putter that you can start working in today that has some dependable fade, reliable glide, well, make sure you head over to Prodigy Discs and check out the Pivot. Now, like we said, learning how to throw straight shots can not only help us on approaches, but it helps evolve our game overall. Looking here, we have double mandos that we've got to hit. This is the long look at the hole that we were throwing from the drop zone. So I still want to think about following through flat, but when I really feel like I'm mastering and getting a hold of that straight follow through, I'm going to give myself hopefully some chances to showcase that here by flat follow through. And there, it's a little offline, but it holds straight enough to find its way into the green. We're throwing a putter here. Normally I would not throw a putter, but you can see that by just making slight adjustments, we'll go PA2 on this next one. We have an opportunity to get it into the gap every single time. What if I struggle with the flat follow through? What if I don't like throwing backhands? What if everything I throw seems to come out on Anheuser? This is where we want to talk about flex lines, because throwing straight doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always throw a neutral type disc straight and hope for the best. Flex lines can be super helpful, such as this A5 that's going to have a little bit of stability. I want to try to pull over on a little bit because you can see I didn't necessarily pull over on it and it tried to fade out on me. If I threw the A2 with that same level of not commitment, it doesn't make it into the gap. So in order to get an A2 to fly straight, I have to think about overstable discs want to lean into the spin that I'm throwing them. So for a right-handed backhand, it wants to go left, and for a right-handed forehand, it wants to go right. So if I simply take the angle and adjust it, and I throw it on Anheuser with that outside edge of the disc up, then what's gonna happen is that forces it to want to go to the right. But because I'm throwing a backhand, it wants to go left. This internal struggle can, in theory, create some hopefully straighter flights. And how do I ensure that I have this Anheuser or the Hyzer angle? You guessed it, follow through. Thinking about keeping the outside edge of the disc up, even on forehand, I should be able to flex it softly through the gap. And know that even if it doesn't act overstable, what's gonna end up happening is, because I threw a disc in an angle that wants to make sure that it goes one way, and the way that I threw it makes it wanna go the other way, this X creates our straight shot. Now, some of you may be asking, well, Mr. YouTube man, what if I don't throw overstable stuff? Can I still achieve straight shots with kind of flippy stuff? Well, you betcha. Something like the PA5. The PA5 is traditionally an understable putter, which means that when thrown flat, if we were trying to use these to throw that flat follow-through shot like we were at the PA3 and the Pivot, then it's not going to hold straight, it's actually gonna turn a little bit. So what we can do is, this disc naturally wants to go right for a right-handed backhand player, we can put it on Hyzer, which makes it wanna go even more left. That internal struggle shines once again, hopefully creating some straight shots that can hit some gaps, such as here. I'm just trying to go straight through this gap. If it fades and finishes to the left, then I'm gonna be content. But realistically, if I find myself straight through this gap, I should be able to take a par on this hole every single day. All of that wind that we experienced before is now running straight at us in a headwind, which is gonna make it even more understable. So we're gonna have to make sure that we put these on a pretty significant amount of Hyzer in order to get them to fade at all. But that's okay, because you can see that it just stands up and holds straight. And it went dead straight at the trees that we're throwing at. There are so many ways for you to start creating and throwing straight shots, and you've got to find your preference. Me personally, I love throwing that understable disc on a little bit of Hyzer and watching it stand up to flat and ride straight for days. This is where Precious Child, my super beat-in pig, comes in clutch, because it's an overstable disc that's been seasoned in to being more understable, but it's not gonna have the overall flippiness that you might expect out of a traditional understable disc, which means when I have to go laser straight and hit a gap in the woods, I can throw a pressure child on hyzer, watch it stand up, and not really ever worry about it turning all the way over. And I gotta say that throwing the A5 really does bring me so much joy. I could see a world that a 300 plastic A5 just continues to work itself in and earn a permanent staple slot in the bag. And even my Birdie Fam stamped 750 Spectrum A5, that thing just continues to shine. I cannot wait to see what kind of life it has as it seasons in to really become just a permanent cornerstone of the bag. So I hope this video was helpful, and that for those of you who have been afraid of throwing straight shots in the past, this gave you the confidence you needed. What tip really stood out to you that makes you feel like, hey, that might be exactly what I needed to hear in order to start getting more accurate with these? And then I'd love to know, in preparation for the next video in the Approach Academy series, what are some questions you have maybe about hyzer that I can answer, because we've talked about hyzers being the most reliable shot in the game often here on the channel. I wanna make sure that you get the tools that you need out of that video. Let me know in the comments down below. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. Make sure you check out the Pivot over at Prodigy Discs. But for now, we're gonna leave you with the birdie.